Well, what I wanted to do, first of all, I kind of thought about doing this just so we could kind of develop a community. And I think that that is something worth doing since so many of you are faithful to the page and to the podcast. So, what I wanted to do was kind of let you guys get to know me a little bit better and hopefully go over some questions that have been sent my way over the past, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And a lot of these questions are repetitive. So if it's a question that you had, then maybe that's good since these questions kind of get repeated. I did go back. I broke my rule. I went back on TikTok. I didn't post anything, but I went back just so I could get questions off of TikTok, and boy, there were a lot. So when I have a TikTok question, I'm going to try to give the username with that just to kind of give credit to where the question came from. If anybody watching has a question or anything you want to discuss, by all means, throw it in a comment. I've got the comments up right here where I can see, and would love to hear what you have to say or a question that you have. But I'll begin with kind of the question I get asked the most here lately, and that is, when is the baby coming? Many of you know that my wife and I are expecting a baby. Her due date is November 20th. We are very convinced that she is going to come early. So that leads into the next question that I got sent to me, I suppose, yesterday. Someone was asking what my thoughts were on the Tennessee Auctioneers Association convention. And to be completely honest, my thoughts are not very good on that because I was not there. With my wife expecting our child, we had decided it was best for me to stay home because we're at the time now where anything could happen at any time. So I did not get to go to the contest, didn't get to go to the convention this year. I hated that. I always loved going. I really wish that they did not have the conventions on Sundays. As a full time minister, I am obligated to the congregation that I work for on Sundays and would have it no other way. So I did not get to go and rarely get to go on Sundays. Sometimes I'll go on Mondays for the continuing education. But as far as the contest goes, I did get to see some of that because they live streamed it. I think Tanner Roberts is a fine bid caller. I think that there are bright things in his future when it comes to the IAC and other state contests. I think Tanner has a great stage presence. I have no problem with the guys who made it to the top three. The judges did their job and they had a very difficult job. I will say I do think that there were a few outliers who could have very easily been in the top three, and it could have gone a toss up either way. But at the end of the day, that's between the judges and the contestants. So to all those who competed, I think you did a really great job. What I was impressed with more than anything with the TAA contest was the rookie contest. I thought there were some humdingers in that rookie contest, and there always is. Shane McCarroll and JD, they do such a good job at the Nashville Auction School encouraging these people when they graduate to enter these rookie contests to develop their bid calling skills. So, and they have. They have. There were several who had competed in the Mule Day contest who also competed in the rookie contest at TAA. And I could see a huge difference, and that's wonderful. I'm very glad. Trevor is on. Trevor Hooley is on with us. He left a comment earlier, and Trevor, I believe, got reserve at TAA. So congratulations to you, Trevor. I look forward to see other contests that you're in. I know that you're doing a great job in the contest, and win, lose, or draw, whatever the case is, if you're making yourself better, that's all we can ask for. So y'all leave comments. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what questions you want to have, and if nobody says anything, I'll just keep rocking and rolling here. We'll probably end sometime around 11:45. One question people may have is, what do we have planned for the podcast? The podcast is growing, and we're glad about that. Couple of things with the podcast. I'm ending today at 11:45 this live stream because at noon I'm going to have Haley Bear on to interview her for the next episode. I'm trying to pre-record these because my life is fixing to change considerably with this baby, and I'm not going to have the time to do them. So Haley's going to be on. James Benton Pendleton was supposed to be on, had a scheduling conflict. and we weren't able to do that. But James is going to be on at some point. He doesn't know it yet, but he's going to be on at some point. Looking forward to talking to him. Who else? I had somebody else lined up, and now their name escapes me. John Kessler. John Kessler, world champion tobacco auctioneer, has agreed to be on. So we just got to get these things scheduled to get them recorded. So that's what's coming in the near future. You guys hang with us. We drop them once a month, usually on the first of the month. And I think they've been a really good thing for new auctioneers in particular. It's interesting that as I get to travel around and do auctions or go speak at conventions, people say, hey, we listen to your podcast and we really love it. So I don't make a dime off of doing this podcast. I think y'all have heard me say that before. I don't so much as I don't have a sponsor, nothing. It's just my time that I give because I see a need among new auctioneers to get to learn this stuff and get to hear it from seasoned auctioneers. So I hope you find it helpful. I really enjoy doing it. One of the questions that I get asked, I guess, the most is how did I get started in the auction industry? You all know that being a bid caller is not something that I do full time. I'm a full-time minister here at the Salem Creek Church of Christ. It's where I'm at right now in my office. I'm here 5 days a week. Well, I guess I'm here 6 days a week, including Sundays. And then on Saturdays, I get to go bid call. Some Wednesdays with the guys at TriStar, I get to go bid call over there. I got started in the auction business 31 years ago. I'm 31 years old, about to be 32 in February. But 31 years ago, my dad went to auction school, and he was in auction school when I was born. So he had to leave auction school and go to the hospital the day I was born, and then went back to auction school after all those festivities. So I grew up in the industry. I grew up. My dad also is not a full-time auctioneer. He's been on the podcast. He's a full-time feed specialist for Tennessee Farmers Co-op. And now for Protrition Feeds, which is it's a joint venture between Purina and Tennessee Farmers Co-op. So that's what he does. But, we just kind of grew up where on Saturdays we went to auctions. We would go help out James Gary with Gary Realty and Auction, and really enjoyed that. So I grew up going to auctions, grew up in the agricultural industry. So, sale barns, farm equipment sales, that was always something that was big for me. And I always wanted to be like my dad. And so I thought forever that I would go to UT Martin or UT Knoxville and major in agriculture. And as a result of that, I would then get my auctioneer's license and kind of sell auctions part-time and work in the agricultural industry full-time. God had other plans. Went to Freed-Hardeman and got a bachelor's degree in Bible, a master's degree in New Testament. From there, went to Faulkner University, got a master's degree in philosophy and a PhD in biblical studies. So I'm putting that to work. But I went to auction school, and I think it was 2013. That has to be right, 2013. Went to Nashville Auction School. At the time, it was owned by Wendell and Ressa Hansen. It was in Tullahoma, Tennessee, which is not very far from where I live, so I didn't have to go down there. I was able to drive back and forth every day. Got my apprentice license. At the time, you had to apprentice in Tennessee for 2 years. Got my apprentice license, was able to apprentice under James Gary Realty and Auction in Columbia, Tennessee, which is who my dad has worked for 31 years. And let's see, got my points, went back to auction school, did the 30-hour course, graduated, and have been in it ever since. I never really thought that it would bring me to where I'm at. I kind of thought that I would just kind of be the guy who shows up on Saturday, works the ground, does ringman responsibilities, and every now and then might get the chance to call bids. But I'm so thankful that it has brought me to where I'm at today. That's how I got started, just because I grew up in the industry in sort of a roundabout way. Y'all be sure to leave questions or comments. Let me know what you're thinking here, so we can. I'd much rather talk about what you want to talk about than what I think we should talk about. That's why I wanted to do this video. One question that I get asked quite a lot is how to take care of your voice. When I teach at the auction school, which I will be at the Nashville Auction School on Saturday, Lord willing, to teach bid calling, I try every time to tell the students you need to take care of your voice. There are things that you can do to take care of your voice to ensure that your voice grows and that it remains strong. Your vocal cords are a muscle. And so just like your arms or your legs or your back or whatever, if you don't work out your muscle, it's going to fail you, right? So use it or lose it. But you don't want to abuse that muscle either. So one thing that you can do in sort of a practical way, some people have hired voice coaches. That can be really helpful, especially if you have difficulty with your voice. So that can be helpful for you. I would say, just in the realm of practicality, try to stay away from over immense amounts of caffeine. Caffeine is a diuretic and it will dry your vocal cords out. So if you have an auction and you are someone who needs that boost of caffeine, 1 cup of black coffee in the morning does wonders. I would say stay away from energy drinks, and that's coming from someone who lives off of energy drinks. I love energy drinks. I'm down to drinking one a day, and I haven't had one actually in the past week, so I'm doing good, but I'm wearing a coffee out. But caffeine will dry your mouth out. It'll dry your voice out, and that can be a problem. Find a cough drop, particularly sugar-free, that you like, that does really well for you. Fisherman Friend is a great brand of cough drop. The lemon flavor is really good. They have like a honey lemon flavor. It's not as harsh as the originals or the naturals or whatever they call it. I'll tell you what, guys, if you take one of those and you can't talk afterwards, you might need to go to the hospital. Those things are stout. They are really stout. I like to drink warm menthol or peppermint tea. That is soothing to your voice. But at the end of the day, I could tell you all these tips for your voice care, staying away from caffeine. Also, I know a lot of auctioneers who smoke, and a lot of auctioneers argue that smoking helps them and helps their voice. That's between you, your vocal cords, and the Lord. Okay, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that you should or shouldn't smoke, but I am going to say that the scientific research is pretty clear that those who smoke have less lung capacity. And so it's very difficult when you smoke to go run a marathon. I would imagine that it's very difficult that when you smoke to sit behind a microphone for 5 hours. That's between you and your vocal cords and the Lord. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that you should or shouldn't, but I am going to say it's probably wise if at least you wait 24 hours beforehand. If you go 24 hours beforehand without smoking before your sale, after the sale, if you're a smoker and you need to pick up a cigarette, like I said, that's your prerogative. But research shows that lung capacity is twice as good if you wait 24 hours before you do your activity to smoke. So ultimately what that means is if you smoke a cigarette and go sell your auction, you're going to have half the lung capacity that you would have had. If you wait 24 hours before your sale, do the sale, and then smoke, during that time of the sale, you will have just as good of lung capacity or better. Okay, so that's pretty important statistics. But taking care of your voice, one thing that I think we need to maybe suggest more than we do is to say, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So if you do a sale, if you do a live bid calling sale, one Saturday every 8 weeks, and you're not practicing for those 8 weeks, you're not doing your chant driving down the road in the car, you're not hooked up to a microphone in a spare room of your house going through your bid calling chant for a couple of hours, it's going to be difficult. You're going to get to about hour 2 or hour 3, if that, maybe at the end of hour 1, and you're going to start feeling it. Your throat is going to start having difficulty. Randolph says, for tired voice or sore throat, try gargling salt water. Yes, sore throat and cold, gargle water and cough medicine, vitamin C drops. Yes, Randolph, wonderful. Gargling salt water and warm water does wonders. I would say that's even true for a sinus infection. It'll really clear that gunk out. Use it all the time. All the time. That's a great suggestion. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Let's see, what else can we talk about? I'll get into some of the TikTok questions here in just a minute. I wanted to get the questions that people had sent me over the past couple of months on Facebook. Let's see. What do I think is the biggest challenge facing the auction industry? I hear that question a lot in auction contests in the interview portion. What do you think is the biggest challenge? I think without fail, the answer that most people give is balancing live auctions with online auctions. How are we going to assimilate to online auctions? I do not think that is the correct answer. And understand this question is asking my opinion. And all I'm going to do is give you my opinion. My opinion is that the biggest challenge to the auction industry is other auctioneers. We live in an industry where we want to talk about being members of our associations. We want to talk about having camaraderie. Go to auction contests because you build your camaraderie. And all of that is absolutely true. But unfortunately, what I see from the outside looking in sometimes, and really more often than not here lately from the inside looking out, is we have fellow auctioneers who are at each other's throats. We have forgotten the principles of business competition. Business competition is not how I can undermine you as a person. It's not me saying this person is an absolute idiot and you should never trust that person or talk to that person. Business competition says this is what I can do. This is how I can serve you, my seller. This is how I can build the clientele for the buyers. And this is how I can facilitate the transaction of this commodity. And I think if we're not careful, that other auctioneers can be the biggest threat. So what we have to do is just take biblical principles. Treat other people the way you want to be treated. I remember when I first started this podcast, I'll tell this story unapologetically. I've kind of kept it to myself for a while. I started this podcast after I had judged the Kentucky Auctioneers Competition back in 2023, I suppose it was. Later on in that year, just a few weeks later, I suppose, I competed in a WLAC quarterfinal. Did terribly. Well, out of 50 contestants, I came 22nd, 23rd, 25th, something like that. Right smack in the middle. So I didn't do too bad, but I didn't do nearly as good as I thought I should have, and there were a couple of reasons for that. And I got a message on Facebook from a gentleman who just flat told me that I was stupid, that I didn't know what I was talking about, that I had no business trying to help these young and novice auctioneers, and that I needed to just quit and keep my mouth shut. That attitude is dangerous to this industry. If somebody wants to help somebody else, it may be that they are trying to help themselves. You know, the best, and I mean that in a positive way, the best way I learn is by teaching. I learn more Bible from teaching Bible classes than I ever would taking a class. I learn more about the auction industry from teaching and from interviewing people for these podcasts than I ever would go into continuing education. Continuing education is great, and I learn a lot from continuing education. But I learn an awful lot by just sitting here teaching, because if you're going to teach, if you're going to share something, you better know it. And if you don't know it, you need to be humble enough to say you don't know it and try to find out. So I think that's what the biggest threat to our industry is the attitude of other auctioneers. We have got to be people who are going to be on each other's side. We got to have each other's backs. Whether it's online, live, whether we're livestock or equipment or personal property or real estate or benefit or whatever. You can divide this industry so much. But what this industry needs is to come together. If we don't, we're going to lose our industry. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, another question I get asked. Will you be teaching at Nashville Auction School? Yes. It's kind of a course-by-course basis. When Shane McCarroll asks me, I make sure that I'm free that day. It is one of the great joys of my life to get to go teach bid calling at the Nashville Auction School, which is here in Murfreesboro. It's about 5 minutes down the road from where I work. I will be there on Saturday. That'll be the first day of class. So it'll be different than what I've done in the past where I'm traditionally day 3 or day 5. This will be day 1. I think that's going to be helpful for the students because the material that I give is very, very basic. We break the auction chant down almost like we're dissecting a frog. We break it down just about as much as you possibly can and then build back. One of the most difficult things about teaching bid calling is helping people unlearn bad habits. And we all have them. And when people come to auction school, sometimes they already have a chant developed. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to getting to meet the new class and get to work with them for about 3 hours on Saturday. One question that I ask all of my podcast guests is a question I'll answer from my personal view, and that is, who is an auctioneer that you like to listen to? Well, I love listening to different styles of auctioneers. You know, a tobacco chant is very different from a livestock chant. A livestock chant has its differences from a car chant. A car chant has its differences from a benefit chant. But I am on record, and I will stay on record, as saying there is no such thing as a blank chant. Whatever your auction chant is, you should be able to use that to sell whatever commodity you have in front of you that day. That doesn't mean that we don't have to change our chant. Sometimes we change our chant based on the audience. For example, when I sell livestock, I can move right along really quick and really rapidly because I'm dealing with professional buyers for the most part. Or even if I'm not dealing with professional buyers, I'm dealing with people who grew up in the livestock or the agricultural industry and they know a little bit about auctions. It's part of their culture. But if I do a benefit auction, you guys may differ with me on this, but if I do a benefit auction, the first thing I do when I grab that microphone is I ask, who is here at a live auction for the first time? And hands go up every time. Usually it's the majority of the audience. I'm not going to sell to them the same way that I sell to my professional buyers at the livestock market. We're going to slow down. We're going to be a little clearer with our numbers. You should be clear with your numbers all the time, of course. But we're going to be clear with our numbers. And we're going to interact with the audience a little more than maybe we would if we're selling an equipment sale or a livestock sale or something like that. Now, all of that to say, who is my favorite auctioneer to listen to? I have really taken a liking to Ben DeBrule lately. Ben has, I don't know Ben. If those of you are on here know Ben, please pass along my regards. I'd love to talk to him sometime. But Ben has such an interesting chant because he has very few filler words, but he extends his numbers. And I love that. It keeps you kind of on guard with those numbers. Another one I like to listen to, I think James Benton Pendleton has a wonderful chant. As far as livestock auctioneers go, I think Jacob Massey has one of the most unique chants. No one will ever be able, I don't think, to mimic his chant. He has a wonderful chant. I will say, as you guys well know, especially those of you who compete, your competition chant is not the same as your daily chant. And I think that's true for all the guys that I'm talking about. It's true of me. If you go online and watch my competitions, that's not how I sound on sale day most of the time. You kind of got to give it a little extra oomph on your contest days. But Jacob, when he's sitting in the sale barn at Mid-South Livestock or wherever he is, when he starts at 11 o'clock in the morning, he sounds exactly the same as when he finishes at 8 o'clock at night. They have some long sales down there at Mid-South. So I love listening to Jacob. I think he has a wonderful chant. Some new guys who have been incredibly impressive with their chant, in my opinion, and I really could listen to them all day long, is one that comes to mind is Jacob Farr. I think Jacob Farr missed a good chance to be in the top 3 of the TAA contest. Now, I'm not saying that the top 3 that were there shouldn't have been. I'm just saying it. I mean, like I said earlier, there's a couple who could have very easily been in the top 3. I think Jacob has a phenomenal chant. I know Jacob well, and we have been friends for a while. his chant now is very different than his chant was 3 years ago, and it has improved substantially, and I'm proud of him for that. Let's see, who else? Who else? I think Drew Williams has an awesome chant. Drew has a natural over the mic voice. He has a commanding voice. And I think his chant is going to change considerably because he has been selling livestock more often. He's been selling cattle at some sale barns. And I know Drew's chant primarily from working goat sales with him. And I think his chant's going to get a little smoother, a little more rhythmic. He's always had a smooth and rhythmic chant. But these minor changes, I think, are going to be awesome. Now, of course, I could talk about the famous guys. In particular, you have the Ralph Wades and the Charlie Cummins and the Matt Lowrys of the world. Peter Garris, T.J. Freege. Those guys are just machines. They're awesome. Andy White. Andy White has an interesting chant because Andy does not really rely so much on filler words. He just has a very smooth and methodical way of engaging in his chant. And he also has a very unique voice. A lot of these Amish guys that are really taking the social media world by storm, people are impressed with their chants. I like it, don't get me wrong. I do think, though, that if I was to take some of those famous Amish auctioneers and put them in one of my sales, they would not fare well because the audiences are different. But those are just some names of guys that I like to listen to going down the road and that I've learned from over the years. All right, I think we're at a good point now. If anybody has a question or a comment, please feel free to drop it. I'd be more than happy to interact with you. I would love to talk about what you want to talk about rather than what I think we should talk about. But I think now would be a good time if nobody has anything, and if you do, please go ahead. I can see the comments here, so I can always stop what we're doing and address that. I'm going to turn to some TikTok questions. One question that Matthew asks is there much difference between livestock auctions and other types of merchandise being sold at auction? Yes and no. The thing about the auction method of marketing is it's competitive bidding. That's what makes an auction an auction. You are asking who has the most money in their pocket that day and who would give the most that day. So this is something that people ask me whenever I have an auction. We'll be setting up for, let's say, a farm equipment auction. Somebody will come up and they'll say, Joshua, what do you think this gravity wagon is worth? Well, I used to give an appraisal to those people. Say, well, it's probably worth about $2,000. I have since stopped doing that. First of all, I'm not an appraiser, and I don't need to be doing the job of an appraiser. But second of all, I might think that item is worth about $2,000, but it might bring $5,000, in which case it was worth $5,000 that day. And so my answer to these people when they ask, what do you think this item is worth, is just very simply, it's worth all it's going to bring today. It's worth however much people think it's worth today. Now back to the question, is there much difference between livestock and other merchandise auctions? No, in the sense that your auction is still who's the highest bidder. You're using competitive bidding to find true price discovery. The difference is with the livestock market, auctions set the market to a large degree. That's why we call it true price discovery, because that day you're discovering the true price of that commodity. It may differ week by week, and it often does. And so you can see the market trends based on what the item, what that commodity brought that day. And you can read into your futures trends that way as well. I know just enough about the market reports and trends and futures and things like that to be dangerous, so I'm going to stay away from that. As far as actually selling, there is a fundamental difference for most. And the difference is, if I'm selling you a Cat excavator, I'm going to be selling it to you as a whole item. So I'll sell it to you for $25,000, let's say. Well, that means you pay $25,000 for that whole item. In a livestock market, there are whole prices. So, in particular, if I have a cow or a cow calf pair or a bred cow or something like that, we'll typically sell those by the head. And so, what that means is when that cow comes in the ring, I will ask for 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, whatever, and that will sell whole head price. In a market that's selling market animals, so this is true of sheep and goats as well, where you have your feeder animals, or your market animals or your slaughter animals. Most of the time, you're going to be selling those by the head. Now, to be fair, I sold a livestock market in Etheridge, Tennessee, where we never sold by the pound. Never sold by the pound. The reason was we didn't have any scales, so we sold everything by the head. For your market animals, though, you're going to be typically selling by the pound. So what that means is if an animal brings, let me just do rough figuring here, I'm not playing off of the market. If an animal brings $2 a pound, and that animal weighs 1,000 pounds, then you're selling that animal for $2,000, $2 per pound, or $200 per 100 pounds. Okay, so that's how they figure that. That can be kind of difficult, especially as an auctioneer. If you're sitting behind the microphone and you're not used to working in those number increments, it can be quite difficult. So you might be working in quarters and half a dollars, or maybe a 10-15 split for your larger loads. That can be difficult. So to answer the question, is there much difference between livestock and other merchandise? Yes and no. You're using the auction method of marketing, but the way in which you use the auction method of marketing can differ. Okay, your number brackets can differ. The method by which you sell, insofar as are you selling by the head, are you selling by the pound, how does the math work? That can differ. You're also working with live animals, and people, I've gotten terribly negative feedback for saying this, but I will die on this hill because I have sold livestock and I know this to be true. Your chant, while there's no such thing as a blank chant, your chant does need to change if you're selling livestock, particularly cattle and horses. Livestock, they're prey animals, and if you're up there just hooting and hollering and going back and forth and you're flinging your arms and all this, I had to learn this the hard way. Those horses and cattle will join you in the auction block. They can get very rambunctious based on your demeanor, and that's true of your ringmen as well, the people working in the ring, working with those animals. So there are differences, but I think if you, for the most part, if you know how to conduct an auction, you can probably make it if you got called in to do a livestock auction. Just be willing to learn, be willing to adapt. That's very important. Okay, another question. B. Duvall 93 on TikTok asked, where did I go to auction school? I went to Nashville Auction School. Went to Nashville Auction School in 2013 with Wendell and Ressa Hansen and several others who would come in and share their war stories and teach us all kinds of stuff that I still use to this day. One of the things that I learned there that I use to this very day, and this is not a joke, not an exaggeration, is the tongue twisters. I recite Betty Botter like I'm reciting the Apostles' Creed. I recite it all day long. It helps me with my voice inflection. It helps me with my muscle memory in my mouth, and it helps me get loosen up with your mouth and being able to shape those filler words and shape those numbers. You kind of have to rely on muscle memory when you do that. But I went to Nashville Auction School 2013. Would encourage anybody to go to Nashville Auction School. I think it's one of the best schools out there for auction schools. There are several good ones. I don't know that there's a bad one, to be honest with you. They're all great. But Nashville Auction School is really doing wonders. Okay, next question. Angel on TikTok asks, how do you say the bigger numbers? And for the video reference, this was a video that I was doing talking about the basic chant. And in my basic chant, I just go from 1 to 9. I say it's my basic chant. I stole it from Matt Lowry. Unapologetically, I think it is one of the best basic chants out there, and it's just very simple. He uses the filler words dollar bidder. But when you do your basic chant, the reason we call it a basic chant is because you're using basic numbers. So 1 to 9 for my basic chant. $1 bidder down, two down, $2 bidder down, three down, $3 bidder down, phone dollar bidder, and you keep going to 9. So the question was, how do you say the bigger numbers? Well, you do have to retrain yourself in your rhythm. If you're so stuck with the $1 bidder, now $2 bidder, where are you going to throw in words like hundred and thousand? So my advice and what I tell the students at Nashville Auction School is, for now and forevermore, your favorite filler word is thousand and million. If you are saying thousand and million in your auction chant, you're having a great, great day. A great day. As long as you can say sold at the end. That's the kicker. Our favorite word in the auction industry, SOLD, sold. Right? But if you're, 1,000 and million, that's pretty good. I've done the 1,000, haven't gotten to the million yet. Maybe we will one day. So how do you do it? Well, you just add it as a filler word. And people say, well, it's part of the number, and so it's not a filler word. Well, whatever. Have your cake and eat it too. For me, 1,000 or 100 is a filler word. The actual handle, the number, is not the same as what comes in the sequence. So whatever, that's getting a little too scientific, a little more scientific than what I cared to get. So how do you do it? Well, I would say that with 1,000 in particular, you want to be clear with that number. I hear a lot of car auctioneers, and this is fine for car auctioneers, but a lot of them will say thou instead of thousand. I'm at 1,000, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, now 3, now 3, now 3,000. Okay, whatever. If that's your prerogative, fine. What I like to do, though, and when I sell heavy equipment, I make sure to enunciate 1,000 as often as I can. So when you do that, you're still relying on your filler words, whether your filler words are dollar bidder, dollar down here, I'm at a bid, hula give, or whatever the case is. You're extending that larger number. That way your mouth does not jumble over the number and you're staying crisp and clear with your numbers. So for example, if I'm selling something, let's say I'm selling one of these mini excavators that we've been selling a lot of at TriStar Auction Group, I might start. They usually bring about $3,000-$4,000 depending on what they are. I might start it at about 1,000. I ain't bid $1,000, not better than one, not better than $1,000, not better than $1,000 down here, not better than one. So what I'm doing there is I'm relying on the handle. So I'm not saying 1,000 every single time I bring up the handle. I'm staying on one. But then I'm going back to insert 1,000 to remind the audience this is the number bracket we're in. I'm not asking 100. I'm asking 1,000. So really, you have to practice all your numbers. I know in auction school, we try to do our $1 brackets and then our 2.5s and then our 5s and then our 10s, and every now and then you'll get quarter and halves, and then you'll get your half bracket. It really does help to just go into the thousands, as if you're selling a car or a piece of machinery, or maybe you're doing a benefit auction and you have a ticketed item. Maybe you have, I do this for Ducks Unlimited. We have tickets to dove hunts in Argentina, and they bring several $1,000s. Well, I need to be practicing my number brackets in the several $1,000 range. Now, your number bracket doesn't change. I'm still going by ones or by 2.5s or by 5s or whatever the case is. But because the number is bigger, I'm going to have to enunciate more and make sure that my audience is on the same page. So that's how you say the bigger numbers. You don't always have to say 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, and now 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, and now 3,000, 3,000, 3,000. You can rely on the handle of the 1, 2, and 3. And because it's not an auction chant, it's an auction song, people will be inclined to still hear what number bracket you're in and what price you're actually asking for. All right. That gets us through the end of the most recent TikTok questions that I have gotten. and the friendly ones at least. One reason why I got off TikTok is because people are just absolute jerks on there. Good Lord. So I've got about 4 minutes left. And what I want to do is just ask you one more time, give you the all in, all done, the last call here to offer your comment, to offer your question. And if nobody does, we'll call it a day. I'm hoping to get the recording of this and put it on the podcast, so people who didn't have a chance to listen can listen. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I think we might do this more in the future, probably sometime next year. I don't want to wear you out with these lives, and I appreciate you taking the time to do it. I know 11 o'clock Central Time is kind of an odd time to do it. Probably should do it in the evening, but I don't have time to do it in the evening right now. We might do that in the future. Heath asks, can one be a contract auctioneer and run his own business, or should they pick one or the other? Heath, it really depends on what state you're in, and it depends on what you want to do with your business. I'll just tell you about me. So here in Tennessee, we they changed the rule where you no longer have to hang your license under a firm license. So every principal auctioneer can do their own auctions. So what that means for me as a principal auctioneer, I have a principal auctioneer's license, is I can do an auction on my own. I can go do that whenever without having to have my own. You have to have an escrow account, but I don't have to have a firm license. What I do, though, is I'm a contract auctioneer. I'm a contract bid caller. So I do bid calling for Gary Realty and Auction. I'll do bid calling for Ducks Unlimited. I do bid calling for TriStar Auction Group, all that stuff. So to answer your question, it really just depends on what you want to do. Can you? You can. I would say, though, that you need to think about your time. It takes a whole lot of time. Okay, Heath, you're from Iowa. I am unfamiliar with the licensing laws in Iowa. I do not know. It just depends on what you want to do with your time. It takes a lot of time to do your own auction. It takes a lot of time to put it together, to advertise, to catalog, and then come sale day. And it takes a lot of time to do that. If you're a contract bid caller, you're relying on somebody else to do that, and then you show up and call bids. I don't see anything unethical with doing that. In fact, I know several in Tennessee who do that. It just depends on what you want to do and what you have the time to do. That's really what it boils down to. But check with your state licensing laws. I'm not even sure. I'll just be flat honest. I don't know if Iowa is a licensed state or not. Some states don't require you to have a license, in which case you just do whatever you want. Before I go, I will say this. For me, I have the ability to do an auction on my own under Champion Auctioneers. But I will never use that because I contract with Gary Realty and Auction and TriStar Auction Group. If I have something to sell or somebody wants me to sell something, I will refer them there. I think that's the ethical thing to do since I work for them as a contract bid caller. Give you the last call here. We got just a minute or so left. Anybody who has another question. Thanks everybody for being on. I appreciate the support. Appreciate everybody listening to the podcast. Anybody have any other questions before we go? Doesn't look like it. So with that, guys, we'll call it a day. I'm going to jump on here and talk to Haley Bear for a little bit, and her episode will come out on December the 1st, Lord willing, December the 1st. So thank you guys for all the support again. I really, really appreciate it. Stay tuned. Give the page a like if you haven't already. Share the page with your auctioneer friends. We're in this to make good auctioneers great and great auctioneers better. That's my goal. And one reason why I haven't quit is because I think there's a need for it. And until I see that need is met, we'll still keep doing it. All right. Well, with that, guys, thank y'all. And we will see you next time we see you. All right, take care, everybody.